Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network and the home of the Headspace Game Review. We are the podcast that helps you get your head in the game.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 189. That's all, folks, for now. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Every Night is Game Night, the podcast that helps you get your head in the game. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining me. For the last time in a little while, I don't want to beat around the bush too much. It is not like a sad thing or anything, but I am pausing the podcast. I'll just kind of hit you guys with this right away. Don't want to talk circles around it for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to get into some of those reasons after I do some last reviews of some games. I have a couple of games that I have gotten to play while in shelter-in-place orders during this COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll review those games and then kind of break down a little bit of why I am pausing the podcast. Pausing, what does that mean? It means that there will not be an episode in the feed next week. There will not be an episode for a little while. But am I going away entirely? No, I will still be around. I will still be on other people's shows. I may even come back into the feed at some point. It won't be all that soon, but ENGN is not going to die. I'm going to keep it around, so please do not unsubscribe. If you like the content, if you enjoy ENGN, and I know there's a lot of you out there, I've heard from like a dribble of people here and there. It isn't like an overwhelming flood, but every time I get a response or an email or a geek mail from a fan, I know someone is out there enjoying the show, and I really, really appreciate every single bit of feedback and positive, reinforcement that I've gotten about the podcast. So to all those fans, I am not killing the show. I am pausing it. I may be back. I'm not sure when I'm going to be back. I'll say a little bit more after I do some reviews. But again, I just wanted to put it out there that this show is going on pause. This is the last episode for a little while. Wanted to make it a 200, but we'll see about that. But before we get to all that, I do want to get to some game reviews, and then I will have a lot more to say at the end of the episode. The first game I'm going to talk about is big time left turn for ENGN. I've managed to go 189 episodes and not review a single party game. I've come close with a couple of products. I'm staring at one right now. But in terms of an actual, large player count party game, kind of 3 to 99 type deal, this is the first one that I'm doing, which is pretty funny. Not getting a lot of solo gaming in, surprisingly enough. I'll get into that as the end of the episode. But I wanted to talk about this one. If I'm going to play a party game, it is going to be this one. This one kind of hits my buttons for a lot of reasons. What is it? It is What Do You Meme? So What Do You Meme is actually the original version of What Do You Meme came out a couple of years ago, and they've released, expansions and different versions of them. It's one of those games you can just kind of infinitely expand, it's a bunch of cards. The one I'm going to talk about here is the family version because, I was hoping to, engage my young one who is 4, who doesn't really engage in games, but, a decent way to kind of get people started. This is the family edition, but I'm going to talk about the entire line of What Do You Meme really quickly. Don't worry, solo gamers. I know there's a lot of solo gamers out there. I'm going to end on a big honking solo game, so just bear with me a little bit while I talk about some of the games that I've played. So What Do You Meme, very, very quickly, is an apples to apples variant. So Cards Against Humanity, and there's a whole bunch of these games that you put something in the middle. And in Apples to Apples, it's a thing, and Cards Against Humanity, it's a phrase, and then everybody has a card or a hand of cards, and then you select one of those cards that you think will match whatever that is in the middle of the table. So, in Apples to Apples, it's like, someone puts down the word knife, and then, someone else will put down, Jason Voorhees as a card, or, these things, trying to, match up, and then a judge kind of figures out whether, who gets the point, and the judging is an open party game style. So it's like, do you want to go with the literal definition? Do you want to just make the table laugh? There's all sorts of hijink that happens, but that's the basic mechanics of what's happening. What do you meme is the same thing, only, like the title suggests, it is a picture that you are trying to match. I have the family version, so the family edition is, suitably, the pictures are, very, very, very much PG. So you got animals and, old people falling down. For whatever reason, there's a lot of memes online that kind of reference old people, and you are definitely going to get a couple of those in here. And then, you just have your cards and you match the whatever the card says to the picture. So it's a meme, right? This is a thing that young people do. They make memes, or they send each other memes, and they grab stuff off of TikTok, or they grab stuff off of, you would pick your social medias. I do see the games every once in a while, at least the pure online games. Someone will just post a picture, and it's a dumb picture, and they'll say, okay, what is this? Give me a caption for this picture. Wrong answers only. I know some of the board game content creators do that too, or the publishers at least, and content creators. They'll post a picture and they'll be like, okay, give me a caption for this thing. So it's a kind of a big activity that you can engage in. Here is the board game version of it. Here is a version that goes with your family. This is the family edition, so you are going to get family-oriented cards. The original version is very adult. If that's your bag, then go ahead and play the adult version. This one will, and when I say families, I think what they're really going for is families with like teenage kids, 5, 6, 8, 10, 11, years old. Even if you're kind of pushing it in that direction, if you're a teenager, these cards are really corny. So I doubt that your, teenager who hates everything, hates you, and doesn't want to be there is going to engage. But if you have, kids that can just basically get into basic reading level up until, that teenage years, I think that this might be a product for you. Stuff like you have too many chores and your parents give you more. And maybe it's an old person who just is slapping his head or something. So there's like kid-oriented stuff like that. But there's also, dad jokes. So when you say what's up and they say this guy, that's a dad joke, and there's a billion of these dad jokes in here. So just corny. I would never play this with an actual adult room, but it's not meant to be played that way. It's meant to be played with families. And I gotta say, I love the pairing of the visual element with the words. My daughter is 4, and it's funny to kind of, she'll look at the picture and she can't read, but we'll read to her. And, she's starting to, learn sight words. And, if she sees a sight word that matches up with the picture in some funny way. And, I have a thing where it's like, if you make a kid laugh, they're more likely to remember the thing. So, we can engage people, and hopefully, she comes away from the game learning a few more sight words. She's too young for this, but I'm still, I gotta do something. In quarantine, I got nothing else to do. So I can't wait to actually, when she gets a little bit older, to engage in the game a little bit more fully. But yeah, that's what you're gonna get with What Do You Mean Family. Yeah, it's a party game. It's as good as the participants. It's, if you get good buy-in, if you get good group, this is going to be an uproariously good time. And I love the visual element. And you could use whatever pictures you want. You just lay down a phone. If you're tired of the pictures that are in the box, they give you some pictures, but you do run out of them very quickly because the rounds are like that. So you're going to want to lay down your phone, or lay down, a Google image search on your iPad, and just scroll through and do the activity off of that. But at the very least, it does kind of open that field for you. So I definitely recommend this. This is, it's been in my collection for a little while. Happy to receive the family edition, and give you guys a little bit of a rundown on that one. But I do enjoy this product. It is What Do You Meme? If you have family, go get the family edition. If you have adults, go get the regular edition. Go ahead and look out for it. It is my favorite apples to apples variant. All right, cool. So we are going to get to the next game. But before I do that, the way I do these solo episodes is I record one review at a time, and then I go back and I edit that review just to make sure it sounds okay. And I noticed that there's a lot of kid noise in the background. I hear them. I wasn't sure how much they would come in. That should tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in my life right now. Do a recording and then go upstairs and see what is happening with my kids. Is my 4-year-old strangling my 1-year-old? Is my 1-year-old climbing all over the refrigerator and the couch? Quarantine life, baby. But yeah, so I'm sorry if you are bothered by the kid noises. Not much I can do about that. So just wanted to acknowledge, yes, I do realize that kid noise is there. So, having allowed for all that, I can introduce my next game, which is The Crew. The Quest for Planet 9. This game was published by Cosmos, designed by Thomas Singh. This was a really, really hot game last year. I kind of feel a little bit bad because I know I'm a little bit late to the party in this one. It was last year in Europe, and it was a very, very big hit. It has come to this side of the pond recently, and has hit with such a thunderclap that it won the Golden Geek Cooperative Game of the Year. Relative to the cooperative games that did come out last year, I'd say I'd go for it. I think a lot of the cooperative games last year that came out were good, but derivative. I don't think that any of them kind of move anything forward in a way. Like, there was a great dungeon crawl that came out last year, and there was, a great collectible card game that came out last year, and all these other kind of remixes of familiar things. This one is definitely trying to put out something new. Or combine familiar elements into a new package, which is a big part of why I'm guessing it stood out for people. So what it's trying to put together is cooperative and trick-taking. So trick-taking is as old as time itself. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to play trick-taking, heart spades and all that. Very few, if any, cooperative games. There is another one that I have not played called The Fox and the Forest Duet. I do like The Fox and the Forest as a trick-taking game for 2 players. There are a few others that have come down the pike recently, but I haven't gotten a chance to play Duet, so I can't compare. I know that's the move for a couple of reviewers to compare those two because they came out sort of at the same time, and they're both cooperative trick-taking, so blah, 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 blah. So won't compare it to Fox and the Forest Duet. So I will just take The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9, on its own. It tries to have a theme. As a matter of fact, it dedicates about half the rulebook to sort of a scenario that you're playing out. You are a crew, and you are fixing up your ship, and you're blasting off into outer space. And as you complete each round of the game, or each complete game, basically, you are going to be progressing this story. So whatever, you start off and you're fixing a ship and everything, and then you blast off, and it has each of the little episodes, things that happen. And the way it works is that you have to complete whatever that particular part is in order to progress to the next thing. So if you lose, then you have to replay it. And if you replay and replay. But it's a trick-taking game. It takes 2 minutes to play through a game, realize either you won or you lost or whatever it is, and then just kind of shuffle up and go again. So it's not that bad. In terms of having to replay. It's not Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven was terrible with this. If you lost your thing, you just you had to do the whole thing over, which as the life of Gloomhaven went on, I found more and more players were like, I'm just going to go on, fudge that and move on to the next mission. But that's a whole tangent, getting back to The Crew. So it does play you through the story, and each chapter gives you 50 variants of increasing complexity as you play. So what are you actually doing? As a cooperative trick-taking game, it's basically a trick-taking game. It feels the same as like a game where you have partners. So it's not like trick-taking is antithetical to the cooperative experience. I've definitely played this type of game with a partner, or had that kind of experience. I'll explain that in a second. You have a deck of cards, 1 through 9 in 4 colors. You have 4 trump cards, suits, so these rocket cards. And you're doing basic trick-taking stuff. Everybody has a hand of cards. You're playing 1 card down at a time, and then whoever has, if it's one color that everybody's playing, you play, or one person plays 1 color, and everybody else has to play that same color. And you are trying, if you have the highest card, you're going to take the trick. And it's really, really simple. And then the rocket cards act as your trump. For that round. If you don't have a color in your hand, you can dump another color, which opens up opportunity for strategy there, in case you want to just dump colors and save your good cards for later. The cooperative part of this is twofold. One, at the beginning of the game, or each game, you're going to have these task cards, and each scenario will identify how many task cards. Sometimes it'll be a couple, sometimes it'll be a bunch. You're going to lay them on the front of the table, and then everybody will draft one. So over the course of the game, your personal goal is to try to win a trick with that particular card. And it's basically a copy of what's in the deck. So you have the card, let's say, it's 1 through 9 of green. So you select 6 green, you're going to have to play the game through and win 6 green. And if you don't win 6 green, if it kind of passes off to somebody else, then, everybody loses and you try again. So you're trying to arrange tricks and you're doing it all together. So, we are going to do this trick now where, we are going to try to arrange it so that this person wins their card, their trick. For that particular game. That's like the basics, and it gets a little more complicated from there. So that's the first way in which this game puts a cooperative spin on trick taking. The second one I think is more interesting in terms of the actual engagement, which is the limited communication. Everyone has these tokens, and you can flip your token and show a card. And you can actually indicate whether the card is your high card or your low card. Let's say you show a 6 and you can position the token. So it's like, okay, this is my highest card, guys. Hello. And that's it. That is all the communication that you get for the entire length of whatever game that you're playing. And right there, there is a significant chunk of the gaming community that's going to be like, all right, I'm good. I'm not doing that. I think of a lot of gamers that I play with that just don't play with inferences. So what did you mean by that? I put down the 6. That clearly means I was this, and I don't have any cards. So why are you doing this? And that Hanabi thing that happens, where it's like, I gave you a 3. What do you think that clue is for? Yeah, I meant you to play it. How do I know that you're supposed to play it? A lot of opportunity in this game for that kind of miscommunication, which can be fun, but also, and here's where a game like this jumps to another level. It has that potential for, if you have good communication, if you can make inferences on what, that means and what you're trying to go for and what your hand looks like, communicating that by, whatever card you show. And when you really get into it, like the people who are kind of advanced trick takers, and I do not consider myself one of them, although I did play a lot of dominoes when I was a kid. I'm Puerto Rican, I have to play dominoes when I was that was kind of a mandatory thing to do. And I'm not great at dominoes, but I definitely got that similar vibe of, so we play partners, right? So I'd be across the table from somebody else be across the table from somebody, and we're partnering up. And but depending on what one person plays and what one person shows, that they're giving a clue of what they have and what they can and can't play. And if you do the inferences correctly, and if you develop some kind of like lexicon, if you develop conventions, they call it. I think in Bridge, there's conventions that you could use. I know in Hanabi there's conventions, and people like kind of talk stuff about Hanabi, about the conventions. I will play with the conventions all live long day. I'll have that argument on another potential podcast when we'll see, depending on how this or other podcasts shape up. Anyway. The potential for that language, that sub-language, that in-game communication, and you're not just doing it with a partner here, you're doing it with the whole table, is very, very delicious. Like, he said this, and whenever he says this, he means this. He usually means this. And, the way they did that, just so subtle, so cool. And just a token, and you get a little blank card that you put in your hand, so you remember that you did reveal a card that's still a part of your hand. Wow. Really, really cool. It's the kind of thing where you're either going to play this game a couple of times and it's like, all right, oh, whatever, or you're going to play this game a ton. Are you going to get through all 50 games? Depends on your play group. Depends on the availability of your family. Is there a chance that you might start cycles of this game, 1 through 50 with multiple groups? Absolutely. It's not like a campaign game where it's like you play it once and it's over. Like you shuffle up and you have a whole different set of cards, different task cards and everything. So you might be a person that plays this game hundreds of times. There's 50 scenarios, but who cares? You could play this game hundreds of times. And what do the scenarios do? How do the scenarios mix things up? Well, they give you more and less task cards to do. As you progress through the game, you get more task cards and more people have to get their trick. It places conditions on you. So maybe during a game, you might have to take a card from somebody else and cycle it randomly. There is an easier mode where you can kind of pass cards, almost like a drafting type of thing. So you can mold your deck to what you want. Some of the harder missions, you might have to not take a trick at all. Or one person is like the sick person. They can't take a trick at all. Or you have to take a certain card last. They have to be the very last thing. There's so many different rules. that they layer on top of each individual game. There's at least 50, but the rulebook explicitly encourages you play more. Make up your own. There's so much variety in this. I mean, just like a deck of playing cards, right? How many games can you make out of a deck of playing cards? A whole heck of a lot. And the crew definitely invites you to engage with the basic trick taking in that way. Kind of, if you want to make your own, style of trick, then you can. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I didn't get a chance to play this 2-player. I was supposed to, but life kind of happens. 2-player, there is a dummy hand, so to speak. So it's like kind of this open information thing, and what whoever the commander is, quote unquote, and that rotates from game to game, depending on who has the highest trump card, will play out that kind of third hand. So it's not just like a blind card that comes in. You definitely have information, but that second fake player, control by the first player, still doesn't know what the person across from them has, so there's still that element of back and forth, even though it's kind of a little bit clunky. I definitely feel like this game was designed totally for 3 to 5 players, and 2 players works. I haven't played it. It just looks like it could be fun. Tepid review. I'm not exactly rushing into trying that one, but I will try it. Like I said, this is definitely one of those games that you are going to play a bunch or a little bit. No real middle ground. And maybe you'll get to, maybe there'll be a situation where, you'll get through 10, 15 missions and you're done. But even then, 10, 15 missions for the cost is, pretty good value. Or you'll just shoot up and you'll play this game all the time. And you'll just have it carried around with you at conventions and all that kind of thing. So, I don't have a ton to say. I'm actually going to refer you guys to the One Stop Co-op Shop. Mike and Peter had an entire episode of their show. They apparently, according to what they said in the episode, are very veteran trick takers. So they have definitely much more in terms of, insight mechanically into how this game works and what works and what doesn't work and everything. I just enjoyed it. I think it's a worthy addition to your collection if you're looking for that kind of experience. Here's where I will go off on my thing, and this is kind of disconnected from the actual crew game. Again, very, very good game. Check it out. It's the theme, and you guys know I love my theme, and I was actually kind of excited when I saw that the logbook and the rulebook, they're in the same book, but the logbook, which is kind of the missions, and each mission has a narrative attached to it, a little short paragraph of what happens. What's supposed to happen? Or something broke down, and this person is, one of your crew members is this, the sick crew member. That's one of the tricks. It's a narrative. Your crew member got sick. He can't take any tricks. For the most part, extremely skippable. As a matter of fact, on the first page of the rule book, it says if you don't want to, read any of the text, or if you want to just play whatever rule you want, just do it. And just already telling you this thing barely matters. And I can guarantee, I won't say guarantee, but I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of people are not going to just, engage with the story or whatever story is there. I feel like that is very much a missed opportunity. I think there's the potential for some extreme coolness when it comes to this style of very, very quick game. And then each quick game kind of adds to something. A lot of my clients, I'm a psychotherapist, and a lot of my people that I know are passing the time in quarantine playing Animal Crossing on the Nintendo Switch. So the Nintendo Switch, like a cutesy little, everybody knows what the Switch is by now. What am I talking about? But it definitely lends towards kind of a cuter, lower overhead, more engaging type games. And Animal Crossing is basically a sim where you are building your building your little city, and you have, the mayor, and you have to do, the mayor interacts with you. You interact with shopkeepers, and sometimes, Mr. So-and-so, the raccoon comes along, and you buy stuff from him and everything. If this is a game that you want to bring to, not just your gamer friends, but just people who are non-gamers, people who played Hearts when they were kids, I think of, when I used to work in a youth correctional facility, jail, youth jail. We don't try not to use those words. They played trick taking all the time. I mean, they're always playing hearts and spades and everything. The space theme, I get it. It's probably more popular amongst gamers, and I could definitely see, okay, let's, gamers want space, so I'm going to give them space. But there was a definite opportunity here to give something a little bit different. And I use the Animal Crossing as an example. Let's say you were playing a trick, or you're playing a game, full of tricks, and then it kind of moves you towards kind of building something. Let's say, and all the cards are like animals and everything. So like, you play the game, and if you win in the first trick, you get like however much money, and you get to build a part of your, your land or whatever. And then, the tricks could be like actual the visitors. So then the visitor can come in, and if you win the trick with the visitor, if you win the visitor 5 times or whatever it is, then they are a permanent part of your city, and you can kind of build the city that way. How cool would that be? And you could have branching story paths. So like if you don't win that many, then he gets removed from the game, and you can no longer get that particular ending. You can no longer build your city in that particular way. It seems so much more involved. I don't know if I'm explaining exactly what's in my head, but using each game, there's 50 different games in here, using each game as an opportunity to get a little something to progress your little city, as opposed to playing this very kind of flat story. I feel like there was a lot of potential here. Maybe, who knows, the game is so popular, they'll go in this direction, maybe like make a little bit more of a campaign. I really wanted something like that just for the accessibility. I can't bring space to just anybody in my family. I don't play with gamers. I don't. I'm like the only gamer in my family. Trying to proselytize and introduce people to this wonderful hobby, but I just, they look at that and they see dork. So having a product that is very, very family friendly, that with a theme and with an activity that people know and is open to people, would have been just an amazing thing to have. And I only say that because they spend half of the rule book with this story. It's not like they didn't put effort into this. They spent half the effort, half the rule book telling the story. And, is it Shakespeare? No, but there was effort put into it. So if you're going to put in that much effort into a story, then why not just blow it out and make it the best that it can be? So that was my expectation when I saw so much story. Not expectation, but like a hope that it would be a little bit more than it actually was. So that's just me, guys. But the fact that the crew inspired me to kind of go down that little thematic rabbit hole is actually a good sign. Is that theme? No. Do I feel like I would be, spaceship or, building a city, or would I feel like any of these things? No, trick taking is abstract. It's supposed to be, but it would have been cool to have that little layer connected to it. So enough of my yammering. That is definitely what it inspired for me. But at the end of the day, very, very good game. Definitely recommended. You will get your money's worth out of it. Will you get more than your money's worth? Will you play this hundreds of times? Depends on if you're a fan of trick taking. If not, you may get your money's worth anyway, which is a fun game. So that is The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. All right, so let us get to the final game that I'm going to review for all of ENGN for its first season. I'm actually very happy to present this game as the final game that we're going to review for this run. It is Shadows of Kilforth. This is by Tristan Hall, published by Hall of Nothing Productions. A lot of reasons why I'm happy to make this last. First of all, Tristan's a great dude. I'm happy to talk about any of his games. Now, I do not make any secret of that. And if I do, if you detect a little bit more positivity, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I do like Tristan. I just want to put that out there. I do try to be as objective as possible when it comes to reviewing games. We've had that discussion many, many times, but yes, that is my bias. I did get a review copy, and Tristan's an awesome guy. So boom, biases. So yeah, Tristan, awesome guy. That's number one. Number two, this game did win Solo Game of the Year from the One Player Guild. And it is one of those things that I see, it's commented on and people are enjoying it. And it's definitely I think it's maybe in that upper echelon of dungeon adventure recommendations. There's a lot, you get that thread every single day, right? In one form or another. Give me a good dungeon crawler, give me a good adventure game, and this is one of the games that gets mentioned fairly frequently. I mean, not as frequently as a Mage Knight or a Descent, but Gloomhaven. But this is definitely kind of in that next tier. If you go down the comments, this game is definitely going to get mentioned, either Gloom or Shadows. So Shadows of Kilforth is the follow-up to Gloom and Kilforth. The mechanisms are basically the same. I reviewed Gloom of Killforth, and I mean, no one remembers that episode. No one remembers old reviews of stuff. You just tune in for the banter and the chatter and all that stuff. I will go over the mechanisms very, very quickly. So this game is gorgeous. It is 25 cards worth of gorgeous scenery art that is kind of laid out in a 5x5 grid on the table. You are an adventurer. You are going to be traveling from card to card and having adventures. As soon as you land on a card, you turn over a corresponding deck. So if you land on the forest card, you turn over a forest deck. If you land on the plains, you turn over a plain deck, blah, 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 blah. And you have random encounters. And every encounter, everything is an adventure. And that's the spirit of the game. This is an adventure game. This is not a dungeon crawler. Dungeon crawlers, I consider to have a lot more of a combat focus and a rich kind of set of combat mechanisms, especially how they've played out in modern board games. The combat mechanism isn't as rich over here. It's more of just like a fight skill check. Which is fine, and that's I guess that's good part and parcel of adventure. Like they don't want to bog you down in a whole bunch of fighting. They want you to have encounters. And you can encounter all sorts of stuff. You can encounter dryads sleeping and you have to negotiate with them. You can encounter or you could see a fight between two other entities and you have to sneak through. Or, and this is I will definitely get to this because this is a main part of my review. You can get like a big bad guy. Or you can get even like a medium-sized bad guy if you get it in the first couple of turns. And they're just there. This game does not scale the enemies to your level. I mean, I think that many of us are used to video games where, you start in the beginning zone and you fight things that you can beat. And then you go to the middle zone and you fight things that you can beat. And the game, whatever video game, always kind of gives you an appropriate skill. And if you happen off and, get wiped out by something, well, then the game just told you went the wrong direction. You go to the right direction and away we go. But it's very obvious about that. Here, not so much. You can encounter a big old dragon or a big old rock monster or something. You can't beat it and you have to sneak by. Or even if you're kind of on the outer edge of being able to beat it, you might, for the better part of discretion, you might want to sneak by anyway, especially in the early going. I think of a game like Ghost Stories where, you seeing the enemies coming into the town and your temptation is, oh, enemy, let me go roll my dice and beat it. And that's almost never the best play in Ghost Stories. You almost want to go to a certain place, get your tokens, level, quote unquote, level up first, get resources, and then go beat the thing. And that's how Shadows of Killforth and also Gloom of Killforth is set up. It's a game where you start off dinky, you're gathering resources, you're getting items, and you're fulfilling quests. The quests are pretty simple, just kind of finding cards with keywords. Like, find an ally. So I'm going to go find a card that has an ally in it. Ally or mountain or something. You discard those things, you progress your quest, then you progress 4 quests, and you eventually, along the way, you get powered up and you're able to beat a big bad. Hopefully you've made it that far. I definitely find that the most lethal part of the game is at the early game. That's the most likely where you're going to be dying. Once you start to get geared up and you get consumables and everything, then you're basically racing the clock. So then, you get past that initial stage. Now it's a race. There's 25 zones and there's 25 rounds. So each round, one of the cards are going to turn over. They're going to, become like a knight. And then, kind of representing descending gloom upon the land or descending shadows. Look at Shadows of Killforth. At that point, the big bad shows up and it is a throwdown. You have to go ahead and beat his butt or her butt. So, I mean, there's so much to this game. I mean, the mechanically and everything, I'll go over like the real positives for me first. I mean, it is my adventure game of choice at this point, adventure board game of choice at this point. There's so much that the decks are so thick with possibility, the emergent storytelling, and that's the key word here. I think this game, for an adventure game, has the best emergent storytelling that I've encountered. Pure, like in a fantasy setting. Like, I think of a game like Legends Untold, very solid game and very cost effective and small. So like if cost is on your mind, you just want like, a smaller box but with a adventuring punch, you might want to look at Legends Untold. This one is pricey. But if you're willing to spend a little bit of money, which I am because I want to disappear into these imaginative worlds, then this is the one for me. I even like it better than Runebound. Runebound, I've recently rediscovered Runebound 3rd edition, and then also going back to 2nd and 1st edition. Those games are really good in terms of just, here you go, here's a big bunch of land and go explore it and kill things and everything. But this one kind of takes the cake for how much stuff is in there, just the volume of stuff, the different experiences that you can have. The narrative that emerges is different every single time you play because the things that come out are different. Okay, maybe there's one game where the dragon came out in turn 1 and it's just hanging out there, kind of, affecting your entire game because it affects where you can go and what you can do. Or maybe you just happen to have a lot of a game where you had like more than usual influence that you had to do. So you kind of imagine yourself as like this fast talking character. Reading on the boards, there are people who experiment, right? So like, you can do your big beefy, fighter and do all your fight checks, or you could be a mage and emphasize getting a lot of spells and, having a lot of dodge, because if you're a mage, you're not going to want to get into a lot of combat. So you're going to want to give yourself time, build up some spells, and then boom, you're this amazing, powerful thing at the end. Should you buy Shadows or Gloom? For me, they weren't that different. I'll be honest with you. I felt like Shadows was a little bit harder. I definitely felt like I moved more in Shadows, which to me is really big. This is one of the big things that I have about adventure games, when movement is a resource, when movement is in the action economy. So my favorite games tend to be when movement is kind of separate from the action economy, because you can always kind of do something on your turn. So like, the classic being Descent, you get your move stat and your action stat, you move 3 and then you can attack and do whatever. You can sacrifice movement for extra attack, but you always kind of have an attack mode that's separate. Here, a couple of things can happen. So you can need movement to get from one side of the board to the other, and that costs you your entire turn. If you don't have the requisite resources, if you don't have a gate open, if you don't have a spell that lets you teleport or do whatever, and that's your whole turn. And that can be pretty frustrating. And when you're spending your whole turn moving, that is not a good thing in any game. So I think I encountered more scenarios in Shadows of Kilforth where I just felt like things were further apart, or I had to hunt a little bit deeper for things. Tristan did say that the keyword distribution for completing spells is the same. Didn't feel that way. I didn't play a ton of games, but I definitely felt like I had to kind of move around. Things moved around on me, and there is one boss that does move. Getting to the bosses, there's one boss, I think it's the Scion of something. Noticed that like, oh, okay, I have to. It moves away from me every round. So it's like, all right, well, that's one less movement, like piece of action economy that I have to actually execute an attack or anything. So for that, maybe for some other relative reasons, I haven't played enough to kind of get a sense of the math, but that's, just something to think about. Maybe Shadows is a little bit harder mechanical wise. The vibe is more, Eastern. The old way of saying it would be Oriental. That is not a lovely term to use, especially nowadays, but, Eastern, Asian, does a little bit more with like, samurai motif and everything like that. So, but in terms of the vibe, it's a little bit different, but it kind of like at first blink, if you're just looking at it, the two games kind of side by side on the table, that won't emerge. It will emerge generally more often when you dig into the item deck or you dig into the ally deck. Some more of that, motif, the differences. Gloom is more classic Gothic fantasy, Shadows being more of that Eastern fantasy. All right, so I'm thinking of a couple of conversations I had in the One Stop Co-op Shop Slack with some gamers. First of all, there are some, I guess, criticisms, nitpicks that I have. And it's funny because there's one guy in there that's like, okay, it's not a real review unless you have some nitpicks in there. So here you go. Here's some nitpicks. And this is a conversation that I had with Mike about the combat system in this game. So the combat system here it's a fight check, but then if you get wounds, those wounds, they take away your actions. So if you roll up in a fight, and it's early, and if you're rolling up, especially this will happen much more earlier because you're not very powerful early. If you roll up in a fight and you're not that prepared, you don't have enough dice you're rolling. You need 3 successes. You're only rolling 3 or 4 dice, and successes are 5, 6. So not a great chance to succeed. And you take some wounds, you lose actions. So like if you take too many wounds, you might only have 1 or 2 actions on a turn. And I remember Mike kind of describing playing the game with his friend, and first attack rolls up to a creature, doesn't do well in the attack, and now is just sitting there healing. and getting his action back, and that is just not fun. And I actually kind of defended that design choice, not because I think it's an actual good mechanism. Like, I think that's a very reflective of an old school mentality, where, they would just throw out a stun. It's like, I remember second edition hold person, be like, all right, you're held. What can I do? Nothing. You're held. Whoops. And that was just like a second level spell. It's like, there's all this action denial, and they just threw it around in there like candy in the older edition of D&D. That would never fly in the Gloomhaven. That kind of thing would never. You always can do something. So I could see someone playing either Gloom or Shadows and getting really mad at the fact that movement is in the action economy, and it's so easy to lose action economy because of either a bad roll or you're trying to take out a monster and the action economy just disappears on you. I defended it not because I thought that was quote unquote good. In fact, I think Tristan, I would maybe kind of considered what he was going for doing it another way, but I do know what he was going for, which is he wanted to give that sense that this is a dangerous world, and that you can't just go in and just like guns blaze and, kill things. And there's so many dungeon crawlers, quote unquote, that do that. I think particularly of Zombicide. Zombicide maybe being like kind of, I think it's taken the place of Descent as like, Kitty's first dungeon crawl. Like when you're getting into it, it's so popular. It's all over the place. The Kickstarters are always doing well. And that's what you can do in Zombicide. Like even at the very beginning levels, the enemies are right there. There's not that many of them, and you just blow them away. And, you just kind of like amp up the enemies, amp up with you, and just keep on blowing them away. Gloom will kill fourth, Shadows will kill fourth. Both of them, not like that. You can get blown away. And Tristan, the designer, wanted you to be conscious of that and make specific choices to use your sneak, to use your influence, to, if there's a choice between influencing or fight, to think about those alternate ways. Even though you don't get the fat loot, maybe from an encounter, think about that and just kind of live another day. And I don't know if it's the best move, but I respect the fact that this is what he wants to go for, and he wants to encourage you to not just, he wants to encourage that, not guns blazing. You are growing as a character, and growth is much more felt when you have a thing that's there that you can't beat, and then you can beat it, as opposed to kind of beating bigger and bigger things along the way. It definitely gave that kind of gamer sense of growth of a character in that way. So I'm going to defend that choice of like the fact that you can lose actions. People won't have fun with that. You can plan around it. You can run around. It'll take you a little bit longer, but you have 25 rounds. 25 rounds is a lot of time. I said all that, and I said, like, great, there's lots of ways around this to have different adventures, to have different skill sets, and have different all this other stuff. And then you get to the end, and the end is always a big combat. One of the lines in the rule book, it says, every negotiation always ends up with a drawn sword or something. And it's like, well, if that isn't a motto for the game, I don't know what is. So you can go through all this like crazy stuff. You can have adventures, you can have encounters, you can sneak around. But then at the end of the day, if you are not a big beefcake, then you're not going to do well. I mean, sure. I mean, I understand. Like, I played old school D&D. Like, if I was a kid at a table and I had to negotiate with the Demogorgon, or I had to do whatever, then that wouldn't have been that satisfying. I want to like fire off my spells, and I want to be like all powerful. But for the fact that the game does start in this more explorative, adventuring, think outside the box, for it to encourage that in the early game, and then shift towards this like Hulk smash moment at the end game, that was a little bit of I wish that there were different bosses. I wish there were different end game conditions to kind of like, mix that up, and not maintain that adventurous feeling throughout. Not everybody will agree with me. Some people may take the right, what Tristan wants, which is, you're sneaking around early because you can't beat Hulk Smash yet. Get yourself to where you can Hulk Smash and then Hulk Smash. If that's what you want, this game will give it to you. I wish that, especially with the second box. I can understand with the first box, just, make it as simple as possible. You Hulk Smash the bad guy. The second box, it's a whole new set of cards. Why not open it up a little bit? And I think it opens it up a little bit, but not a lot. These products are very interchangeable, and there's reasons for that. If you're gonna release a whole nother game, I was hoping to see some, kind of blown out mechanisms and different ways of approaching a final boss. If you're in an adventure, like, Frodo never duked it out with the bad guy. He could barely overcome Gollum. But, through tricksiness and everything, the story was able to progress. And I was, I kind of want to have that adventure. Like, what if your character did level and got capabilities, but not necessarily as a fighter, just more able to survive. I wonder how that would have gone, especially, baked into a game like this, which is basically Hooked on Adventure. So that was my big thought. I mean, it's tough to kind of call that a criticism as opposed to like an expectation of what I would want in a game. It's a fine line, right? I can see somebody not considering that an actual criticism of the game, just a thing about my own expectations about it. Those are my thoughts. But, notwithstanding those issues, I'm very happy to enter the Killforth universe once again. Gloom was fun. Shadows continues to be fun. Do you need to own both? You really have to like this game to own both. You really have to love it in order to own both. And I don't know if I'm quite there. Both of these products are like an 8 out of 10. That's like really light for me. It's short of love. Do I need both in my collection? I have to think about. I am going to think about that one. However, one of them will be in my collection. I can definitely say that. That is my final review for Shadows. Definitely a recommendation, especially if you have not played Gloom. This is a perfectly good product if you want to enter the Killforth universe. And that's a wrap. That is the last review for Every Night's Game Night for the foreseeable future. I am pausing the podcast. So what exactly do I mean by that? What I mean is, a couple of months ago, I wanted to put the podcast on hiatus and I played reruns. No reruns from the back catalog like I wanted to, but I had enough appearances on other podcasts and I posted those and, my songs and all the board game content that I do. And I was able to kind of get that going. And then I came back because the COVID thing hit. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have more time, quote unquote, because I'm in quarantine, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to fire up the podcast and I'm going to have guests and I'm going to do all this stuff. And that is not what happened. The opposite happened. I got more busy. The kids are always around and I am always at the beck and call for childcare. My mother is actually visiting this week. She doesn't live close, but I was able to drive down and go fetch her for the week. So that's why I'm able to hop downstairs and do an episode for you. Thank you, Mom, for jumping on the grenade of caring for my children for a little while. But childcare is definitely a thing. It's very draining. We did a whole episode on that, me and Jordan, Anthony. It wears on you, it's just, the everydayness of it, not really getting a break. You just, you love your kids, but it can be that direct time with them can be draining, but especially we don't have other options. You want to be able to have that diversity. And my job has gotten harder. Like a lot of people have lost their jobs, especially in America. I know in the EU, they've treated it differently. You're kind of on this furlough government sponsored thing. In America, you've lost your job and a lot of people have all sorts of free time. I am not one of those people. I am busier than ever. And I spent a lot of time in front of the computer doing video chats with people. A couple of weeks ago, I've been breaking personal records. Like I see 43, 44, 47 people per week, where it's normally around between 35 and 40, which is a massive difference. No real breaks throughout the week. And I'm not really saying that for like sympathy. I'm not saying that, kind of woe with me. It's just, being honest with myself and being honest with you guys. That, those two things, how like work and family have just been completely realigned in a way that has just placed heavier burdens on both. I got to be honest with you. I just haven't had it in me to game. I can't do the online gaming thing. I bought Tabletopia. I've played Tabletopia games with a couple of people, and I played with Anthony Underwater Cities, which is a pleasure playing it out with him. And I've played on Board Game Arena. I spend my whole day in front of a screen and it's draining because I have all these emotional conversations. The last thing I want to do is spend an evening in front of a screen. Like I feel really bad. I was supposed to have a game with Michael Kelly. I think we were going to play the Crew 2-player, and I just felt not good about it. And to be completely and utterly honest with you guys, like there are days where I'm not okay. I'm okay, guys. I'm okay. I'm gonna get through it. I'm happy overall with life. There's definitely people out there that are in much worse positions than me. I am not, I'm definitely not putting it out there that like I need help or anything. Believe me, this is a good thing. Then I'm kind of moving on to next things. But there are definitely days where I'm not okay. And those are happening more often than they would in other circumstances. And I have to honor that. And before, every night is game night would be like kind of my refuge. And gaming in general would be my refuge. But it's not anymore. And I had to come to that realization. And once I did, I kind of knew what I needed to do. And I'm not going to publish back episodes. I'm just going to drop it. And I'm going to try to focus on my own healing. And I'm going to try to focus on other things. Am I going anywhere? Me, Jason, I'm going to try. I want to be on other people's podcasts. I'll be a guest on anybody's podcast. And, if you are doing the editing and you're doing the organization and you're doing the hosting, you being a content creator that wants me on, by all means, have me on. You heard me on BGA. I've stopped by Liz's podcast to do Liz's YouTube to do video chats. Other people who want to have me on, I will absolutely do that. And I actually filmed a video review. My very first video review I haven't released it yet. It's still being done. That was filmed 6 weeks ago, and it's not done yet. That also told me it might be time to take a break because I just can't bring the energy to, just do something that I should love, right? But maybe I'll give myself a couple of weeks and to get back to making a video. I found a way to kind of do video reviews that I had fun with, so I might pop a video review here and there. I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know how I'm going to continue to engage. I do know that I'm going to need some time. Will I be back? Will ENGN be back? Maybe. I'm going to leave that open-ended. Again, don't unsubscribe. I think one of the best times that I have every year is the top 100 commentary with Kevin, that when Kevin does his list in the One Player Guild, which is around like October, November. I know that's a long way off, but like I'm looking at it like, okay, when am I realistic? When could I realistically reboot ENGN? Like that one just kind of looks at me like a tent pole that like I would feel really off if I didn't do those episodes with Kevin or with Liz, with Anthony, whoever wants to come on those shows. So I'm looking at that maybe this summer. I don't know. I'm not playing games. And there are days where I'm not okay. And I have to honor that. And I will be okay. And I'll be, I'm going to get through this. And I'm a spiritual person. I'm going to pray. And I'm going to meditate. And I'm going to get in touch with myself. And I'm going to just, continue to trust that. As, it's, man, it sucks. I'm doing this by myself. I know I could have invited Anthony on, I could have invited Liz on. It's to kind of like go for that back and forth, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I wanted to talk directly to you guys, the audience, and, the awesome listeners. I've heard from Morton Monrad Pedersen. He is a regular listener. He listens to the shows. A bunch of other people, Shakaday, who is who's a poster on BGG. Adrian Dong also comes up as a name that I've seen comment on episodes. Corey, who has been on the show, Corey Mayo. All you guys, I for whatever reason, I just felt like I wanted that connection to you guys and just say thank you so much for sustaining me, and everybody else in the community who listens. Sorry if I'm not mentioning your name. But you guys are in my heart. Thank you so much. And I want to just kind of take some time to talk directly to you and explain a little bit about why this pause has to happen. And it's a good thing. And I will be back in one way or another. Either ENGN will live again in some new iteration later in the year or in the future, or I will just come up with a whole new thing. Be either a video review or maybe a whole new podcast. I don't know. So that's basically the big story. I have a lot more to say because I'm a lot bigger. My life is a lot bigger than just gaming. There's so much going on in the world. And I think we're going to drop that in the after credits. Some discourse about like what's going on in the larger world that's contributing to kind of how I feel right now. But that's not gaming related. And I want to very much honor that this is a gaming podcast. You guys come here for gaming. But I'll throw it in there anyway, just in case you want to listen to it. Some more thoughts about like where I'm at. So that's it. This is it for ENGN. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. We'll see if we see each other again. We will see each other again one way or another. Maybe ENGN will come back at some point. But until next time, go ahead and grab a solo game off of that shelf. And let's make every night game night. All right, welcome to the after show. My daughter is having a tantrum. I'm recording in my basement right now, and my daughter is pounding the floor. Maybe she doesn't want to go to bed right now. It is 7:37 p.m. on Tuesday, the 12th, as I record. Thank you, Mom, for taking care of bedtime. So if you hear pounding, that's what's going on. Hopefully that ends sometime soon. I guess I just wanted to come on here. I already said my goodbye in terms of like the gaming aspect of it. But I wanted to come on here because I have to get something out. I have to get something off my chest. And maybe the next thing that I do, because I do want to continue to create content, maybe the next thing I do is just like, completely not gaming related and just talking about my kind of professional self. I'm really into medicine. I'm really into healthcare. I'm really into mental health and people being healthy and, that whole aspect of life. And that's kind of, it's what I've been doing for the last, however much of my life, and that's what I've been really doing with this COVID stuff. There is so much pain that is happening now. If you don't feel like getting into the politics, if you don't get into depressing stuff, then go ahead and turn this off right now. But this is like my real life. This is what I live in. I get in touch with people and they are experiencing so much pain in so many different ways. Loneliness, there's so many lonely people. There's so many people that are just, gaining weight, because, I think even the Germans even have a word for it, like Corona something. I won't pronounce German, but like that, like the word that expresses how much weight you gain while you're in quarantine for Corona. But people are they're eating unhealthy. They're eating comfort foods. And that's just sapping people, their energy overall. I'm definitely kind of in that boat myself. I try not to be, but hey, it's, it's kind of, you're living in this constant state of arousal. And I don't mean like, erotic arousal. I mean, just your fear hackles, your fight or flight instinct. I find that along with the loneliness, along with everything else, that people are living this kind of like low level hypervigilance, this hypertension. And when you live in that constant state, when it's like just like a steady state, there is no kind of breathing out because you have to be mindful of this and because you're, the information is just all bad. And, the comfort food comes in and just kind of like creates this negative cycle. So I've been definitely helping a lot of people with that. And just like dealing with that steady state of hypervigilance and arousal and unease. And it's just it's been wearing on me, So there's that. There's that. And then, there's like, I'm not a frontline worker. I'm not on I don't meet COVID patients, but I am kind of at that second tier of helping the helpers. I help nurses. I help doctors. I help people who are on the front lines and what they've seen. And the, nurses, they've seen more people die in their shifts than like especially if you're working in the COVID ward, they've seen more people die in their shifts than they've ever seen, and more people dying alone. Because COVID patients have to be isolated from people, and that's beginning to really wear on people, wear on nurses. And I'm going to get political here, guys. Sorry. We treat our nurses like garbage. We treat our frontline workers like our healthcare workers, the people that are actually, their butts are in the firing squad. They're treated like garbage. They're underpaid. The PPE, the personal protective equipment situation is still, after months of this stuff, is still completely atrocious. People wearing garbage bags, people wearing recycled equipment, they're wearing scarves. I mean, like how much time have we had to address this situation, and they're still wearing this stuff? And I know as I record this on May 12th, 2020, the curve, quote unquote, of cases is going down in some places. And I'm in the Northeast. The cases are going down. And I've heard stories of people able to go to a hospital and get a test and and they're fine. And that is encouraging. I'm glad that we're at that kind of, a little state, but it's still not over. And you're hearing all these things about like it could come back again. And there's this mad rush to just reopen things, get back to work and blah, blah, blah. And but without what we need to do in order to make sure our healthcare workers are healthy and to make sure, just like in the general populace, everybody has access to a test. Everybody has access to the ability to just, quarantine away if you are positive, but that's why Corona in New York, ironically, got hit the hardest, because, there was no ability for those people to quarantine themselves. Like, they've got positive, but like, where are they going to go? They're going back to very, very crowded homes, and they're spreading it amongst everybody who is in their home. So we, as a society, I just feel like we don't respect health and we don't respect science, and that's left and that's right. I don't want to do the whole blue state or the blue team, red team thing, Republican, Democrat, whatever. Like I think that in both ways we fail. Like we're kind of listening on our information bubble. We're not just like following the science. Like the people that had the best responses were the people that just followed the science. And like they're aggressive. It's like, all right, we're not messing around. We treat this virus very seriously. We're going to let the doctors be the people that are communicating. We're not going to inject politics. We're not going to inject business and nonsense into this. Like that stuff is secondary to people's lives. To me, as a healthcare worker, I'm a healthcare worker. It's just grim, and I see it. It's not just like stuff that I'm reading on CNN, although I am reading CNN or different the New Yorker news outlets. I live this every single day. I live the neglect of essential and healthcare professionals. I live the how mean we are to old people. How we consider like life just kind of this acceptable loss. And if it's grandma, then grandma had a long life anyway. It's like, I can't believe that this is our country. I can't believe that. I can believe it, but it's just something people says. So I'm maybe me putting this on the podcast again after the after credits. Me putting this on there is my part of my healing process. I need to kind of get this out into a little bit more of a public space and not just like grouse about it somewhere. I do want to do something, and I want to explore doing something about it. I have explored, kind of starting my own completely independent podcast. I haven't done anything yet, but just kind of put it out there, musings, the negative stuff that I'm seeing, but also the hopeful stuff. I do yourself a favor. If you're ever like really down, go ahead and search for the hashtag COVID kindness on Instagram or on some of these other social media platforms. You actually might find some really inspiring stuff that everyday people are doing to help healthcare workers. People making masks for nurses and people donating time and money and like, okay, here's a whole dinner. Like I'm going to cater a whole dinner and everybody that's a nurse on staff is going to eat dinner on me tonight. That's been great. And I've seen that too, but not enough, too small. As a society, we need to do a lot freaking better for our healthcare workers. And I'm not saying that, I mean, obviously I count myself as one of those healthcare workers, but definitely people on the front lines. Good God. And I don't know, I'm a little bit scared of what's going to happen with this disease in the summer and fall. But that's it. That just wants to get that off my chest. That's what I'm doing. That's my life. That's my world right now. It's hard to separate because of the profession that I'm in. But, doing the best that I can, and I'm going to continue to do the things that I need to do to keep myself healthy, to keep myself out there and helping. And I hope I can figure out a way to do more. And I encourage everybody that's listening, whatever you can do to help healthcare, to help science, to help split this whole left-right bubble and red team, blue team nonsense, and just help people, I definitely encourage you guys to do that. Thank you.